Navy Petty Officer First Class, Christian Saucier was sentenced to a year in prison for taking photos of classified workings of a nuclear submarine.
Although he accepted responsibility over the completed FBI investigation of her email practices. This after the agency last week released more documents, including notes from their interview with Mrs. Clinton in...
Good morning, and thank you for being with us on Fox and Friends Weekend.
Good morning, and thank you for having me on.
Good morning.
What is striking when you read these 60-some-odd pages is that Hillary...
To him and what happened to Hillary Clinton. What do you mean?
Right. First, let me clarify on the lead into the story.
Picked out just a few. We'll put them up on the screen. She could not recall getting security clearance
by the judge that any photos were ever transmitted off of his phone. So what I mean basically is that we recognize the fact my son has been charged with a crime, that he's been sentenced to
an unclassified system. Security briefings when leaving office. 40 times, Susan, she said, I don't recall, which
about, and I'm grateful people are listening, is to the fact that Hillary Clinton is not held to the same standard.
I remember nothing. How damaging is this?
Right. I think this is a problem for her going forward, because the central theme of her campaign is that she is the most ready and the most competent to become the next president. And so, looking through...
Understand how people can't see the clear double standard.
Well, of course there is one, and it's not like your son put the photo on an unsecured server.
Remember very key details here. This isn't, what did you have for lunch on this date? This stuff's, this is about the classification system. This is about her training. This is about her use of electronic devices. All these things that, many other people might be able to remember, and she's saying she can't remember. Is this because it's a safer answer?
What struck me is that she is confronted by the FBI agents with these emails that show proposed military drone strikes on enemies. And she says, I can't remember these. And then in the same breath she says, and I didn't realize that was classified. Does that call into question her competence, not just her judgment, but put another way, rank incompetence?
Well, and that's where she's leading.
Well, that's a great question, and the answer is because Mr. Trump cares about all Americans, not just
the competency where she gets ahead of Trump. And now, looking through these notes, you see she's saying
the FBI investigation into Hillary Clinton's private email server.
At the outset in March of 2015, when she was very adamant that she understood the class.
Well, I think it's going to be a tough sell in Detroit, especially on immigration, because in Detroit, when you...
It either looks like she's not telling the truth, she's being disingenuous, or she really didn't understand what she was doing. And also, Greg, that overshadows what she should be doing right now, which is talking about her record as the nation's top diplomat, her time in the White House. She can't talk about any of that because it's all completely overshadowed by this email situation and the drip from the FBI. None of it makes her look good, and well, in particular, it makes her look incompetent.
And it's not just that she can't remember anything, but she seems oblivious to the basic duties of her office, uninformed about vital matters. Let me put up another set of bullet points here of things we learned. She was not aware of hardware or software systems, which, by the way, she's using on an hourly basis. Not aware of security concerns with a private email system. Could not give examples of how to classify a document or recognize its classification. She did not realize, as we pointed out, drone strikes were classified. Didn't think about whether military documents should be classified. My goodness. An 8th grade civics student would probably know, military documents probably should be kept secret.
Right. It undercuts her whole argument for why she's the better candidate than Donald Trump. And, the Republicans have smartly been going on the attack on this very front. And, of course, we're probably going to hear a lot more about this during the upcoming debates. And interestingly, we've seen the polls tighten. We've seen Trump even a point or two ahead in some national polls. But this is all going to come down to these undecided voters who are in some cases growing in some of the polls, who do they think can handle the job? That is really what gets down to when people vote.
Well,
who do they feel more comfortable with?
You can just hear Trump and Republicans saying, look, she's America's top diplomat. She has access to the most closely guarded secrets, and yet she seems entirely cavalier, if not unknowing. She hasn't held a news conference in 274 days. Is she hiding because she doesn't have any good answers to what will invariably be tough questions?
Well, as long as she's leading in polls, it's a comfortable place for her to be, to just not face the press. If you see her start to tank in the polls and she needs to get out there and defend herself, I think she's going to hold a press conference. I mean, don't forget, Greg, going back to these emails, 30 of the emails I think that she purged, where she said it was all about yoga and wedding planning. 30 of those emails were about the Benghazi terrorist attacks, which were under 2 federal investigations at the time.
Right.
There's so much that Republicans can drive home and continue to drive home about this issue that will really challenge her competency. And what it does is it prevents her from talking about her record in the State Department.
Yeah,
and I
who
think
do you want to have,
probably most,
that 2 a.m. phone call or 3 a.m. phone call. Susan Ferriccio, thanks very much.
Thanks a lot.